This is a Sabrent Rocket NVMe SSD. 2 terabytes of NAND flash that can reach potentially up to 3.4 gigabytes per second reads and 3 gigabytes per second writes. Also TLC, meaning that it only has 3 levels of bits per cell, meaning that hopefully it should retain most of that speed even as you keep filling it up. And all of this in a PCB that is about as big as some large sticks of gum. So when I originally built my PC back in August of 2019, I made the incredibly foolish decision to just use a SATA SSD. But the way I make videos now has changed so much, and I've added so many things to my workflow that NVMe at this point is a necessity in order to make my computer usable during some key stages of the video creation process. So if you were to ask me right now, Powerman, in making videos, what is the thing that is your biggest bottleneck? Or more specifically, what hurts you from being able to make the videos the most? And to that I would answer is honestly the speed of my SSD. Now I know some of you are already going to say, well Powerman, why are you getting an NVMe SSD? It's a waste. Did you not watch that Linus Tech Tip video where they did a blind test between NVMe and SSD using Windows and even doing specifically video editing stuff? So you're just wasting your time here. So yeah, I did see that video, and that video was really spot on with NVMe will not make your Windows experience any snappier or your video scrubbing performance that much better. But that video really holds true in spirit for my use case, which I haven't gotten to explaining yet. So since I've started 2020, I've been really doing this thing where I export, instead of going straight to compressed H.264, I'm now exporting to the lossless codec of Cineform. Yeah, the files are huge, but I do this as sort of a way to prevent, you know, if 70% of the way into a render, Adobe Premiere or DaVinci Resolve crashes for whatever reason, I don't have to start the whole render over again. And so by separating it into a render step and then a compression step, that I have less risk of failure. I mean, I haven't kept track of how much time it would take to just export straight to H.264 versus, you know, doing lossless and then compressing it later. So I mean, it does take more time, but if your computer crashes anytime during that, you know, all-in-one process, you're probably gonna be spending more time re-rendering it than just, you know, doing the 2 steps to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Now there is one big problem with this workflow that I can entirely attribute to my SATA SSD being way too slow. Now I know that lossless codecs are pretty huge. I mean, I've made some Cineform exports that are in the 100 gigabyte plus range. So it wasn't that shocking to me going into the workflow seeing the file size, but what did surprise me was the fact that my computer became completely unusable during a Cineform render when my SSD was hitting 100% usage. So when I was doing H.264 exports, what I like to do was I like to create the thumbnail, write the video title and the description, maybe do some other miscellaneous stuff related to the video while it was happening. Well, pretty much the way I do things now, that during the Cineform export, it is entirely impossible for me to do anything else on my computer. That's how sluggish it feels. Adobe Photoshop? Yeah, good luck. File Explorer? Oh yeah, you know, incredibly chuggy trying to find any files and stuff to move around and, you know, get into place. Even Google Chrome, which I never would have expected to need that much, you know, speed from an SSD, is just plain unusable when it's hit this hard. So when we talk about that Linus Tech Tip video about actual usability for computer of NVMe versus SATA not being that big of a difference, well, in this case, the extra speed would help with the actual usable function of my computer. My computer essentially is like doing nothing but rendering because it is essentially functionally useless when I do that. And before you say, oh, well, it's your CPU that's getting hit super hard and that's why, you know, you're having all these problems. Well, I use Handbrake, and that uses as much, if not more, CPU power than a Cineform encode, and uses way less SSD. And I have no problem making a thumbnail or writing a video description at the same time as I'm compressing. So I know that it's the SSD. To be fair, I could just, you know, let my computer do the rendering and then walk away for a little bit, go do something else. And you know what? That's a fair assertment, right? That people take breaks when they're rendering, you know, they go maybe take a shower or, you know, eat food or whatever. And I do that stuff too at the same time, and I know that the actual render times in the grand scheme of the editing process are not a big deal at all. Because I see people talk about render times on certain CPUs or whatever, but like 10 minutes versus 11 minutes is not going to be that big of a difference. And so when you really start getting down to it, the render process is probably one of the quickest parts of just video editing in general. So it's not that it takes a while that bothers me, it's just that my computer's not usable during that time. Because I can wait out an hour-long video render if I can do other stuff at the same time on my computer. But something like a 15-minute render where my computer becomes unusable is much more insufferable to me than an hour-long render where I can use my computer and then do other stuff. I also could change my workflow to where I could either make the thumbnail and the video description and all the other miscellaneous stuff before I render, or maybe at the very, very end, but like it'd be nice to just have multiple things going on simultaneously rather than extend it by that last little bit. And even if the export process used 100% of this drive, in theory, the SATA SSD that Windows is on, that all of my other programs run off of, should be unaffected. So I could still get work done even if this thing is like at 100% limit. So anyways, guys, that's it for this video. The intro was really fun for me to shoot, surprisingly enough. And this script is a very interesting one to write. So that's it, and have a good day.